We're talking about uncertainty, but we're a bit, ignoring the next generation. And in this session, we're going to do exactly that, focus on the new generation, young people, what they want, what they dream about. So let's invite all of the dear friends that will be in the panel. First of all, Knesset member David Bitan, chair of the Knesset Economic Affairs Committee from the Likud party. You can sit wherever you want. You're the first. You can choose. Knesset member Yorai, Lahav, Hertzanu, from Tal Cohen, student from the School of Sustainability here in Reichman. Atalia Toronto, vice chair of the student union in studying diplomacy and strategy here in Reichman, and all moderated by Lior Akerman, senior fellow in the IPS here in Reichman as well. Thank you. Good morning to everyone, to everybody that arrived. The IPS, the Institute for Policy and Strategy, responsible for this conference, this Herzliya conference, for the first time since the beginning of this conference, and I think this is the 20th, we have a panel for the first time with full collaboration with the student union of the university. We came to this point, and this collaboration has been created and established throughout the entire year with students, with non-specialty tracks here, with the understanding that addressing the next generation of the State of Israel is a critical issue, particularly crucial for how we build our national resilience. It's one of these main issues of this conference and what we deal with in the Institute. And national resilience is comprised from unity or disunity in society and many other elements. But among other things, we thought that the way to address the next generations is that we have to collaborate and work and address them directly. Now, within this cooperation with the student union, we used a kind of questionnaire. I won't call it an actual survey, maybe a questionnaire that was handed out to all university students in a way, and that addresses questions that have to do with issues that are relevant to students. And among the top priorities, as you can see, is the price of living. That's something that we see across all surveys and questionnaires among not only here in Reichman, but everywhere across Israel. And the second is the so-called legal reform, which we won't address in this session because the conference deals with that in many ways. The third issue is the labor market in Israel and the occupational security provided to the new generation with this kind of reality, and housing is another issue. And those are the questions that were raised in the questionnaires. Now, apart from that, we've done a lot of work throughout recent months that have focused on the next generation, and and you can see in the following slide the background a bit to that, because this commission, if you would call it, it's called the Next Generation Commission. It was established in 2001 by Tommy Lipid at the time, and then it was stopped in 2006. But the initial goal was to assure the way that the government of Israel makes decisions today in a way that impacts following generations in 10, 20, 30 years, without harming the ability of the state to function today, but also to look to the far future in a broad range of issues and fields. So we'll talk about that. Now, the way that we'll conduct this panel is very simple. We have two very esteemed representatives for the student body, and we'll start with them, Atalia and Tal, and they will present to us the major issues, the major challenges that concern today's generation. And they've also done their own field work among the student body, and they are bringing not only their own personal views, but rather those that represent all students here. And then we'll have a series of questions also to the Knesset members. I thank them very much, to both Knesset members that have come Knesset member Bitan and Lahav Hertzanu. It's not trivial that in such busy, chaotic times you have made the time to come here and be with us. And finally, we'll open up to questions from several students that want to address the entire panel. And then we'll have a summary, and hopefully we will be able to summarize on a good note. So first of all, Tal, if you would. Hello. Well, we're basically the Z generation. 24, 25 years old. We left our parents' homes. We live, in most cases, independently. We're students for the most part. And we conduct our independent lives. We have tuition, we have rent, we have living expenses. And most of us are in reserve duty, do reserve duty. And we can see this in the last campaign here across the campus. There's so many people were called to reserve duty. We are the fourth generation that is opening up this quarter towards, the last century of Israel, because we just completed 75 years, and we are now the last quarter century to go before we complete 100 years since the establishment of Israel. And we are today's generation, and we thought about several issues that are really important to us, to our future here in Israel. And as a student of sustainability, and Lior already presented that, I must begin, of course, with the climate catastrophe. The climate catastrophe is something that we are not prepared for as Israel, the state of Israel. We're not prepared for the next 20 years down the line. And there are going to be crises if we're talking about the rise of sea levels. Most of the cities of Israel are on the coast. That's a problem if we talk about population density. If we talk about personal safety and food safety, climate accumulation, if that's something that you've understood. We in Israel are a very developed country, maybe one of the most developed in the Middle East. We are a startup empire. We are very strong in a sense that we know how to conserve our water. But at the end of the day, they're going to need us, these other countries in the region. The Middle East, which is mostly desert, relies on our abilities. How can we prepare for what's going to happen to our neighbors? How do we maintain our own food safety? Most of our food here in Israel is imported from other countries. Why didn't we learn from the COVID pandemic? We are reliant on other countries, and we want to be independent. We want to be self-reliant. I can tell you that my family are farmers. We come from agriculture, and there's not enough agriculture in Israel. There's not enough people that are creating Israeli produce. And if things occur in our neighbors, we rely on them, and we can't rely on ourselves. We have to maintain the startups that we have in Israel. We have to maintain that as well. So that's the first thing, our self-resilience, our self-reliance. Now, I'm also a student of government and government studies, and we really would like to be people in this track, to be public servants. But we are students at the moment, and we'd like to work in these kind of positions. But government ministries and offices don't allow us as students to, make a living with the price of living as it is. And I'll explain. Government ministries have a lot of student positions, and there's a lot of student positions in the public sector. There are enough, but a student can't allow themselves to do so many hours of work a month if they still want to be a full, active student with good grades and succeed as a student. And also do things that are anything beyond that to progress and advance in life. And you can't do that with those wages, with student wages, when we're talking about rent that goes up year by year. He's without a mic. No, that's for the religious dudes. Yes, the religious guys. Yes, they can. I'm sorry, I can't hear the person interjecting because he's not mic'd. But for the number of hours that they demand, it's fine. Okay, let's move on. So let me just summarize with two other things. when we talk about the economy, as I said, that we were never taught in school. I can tell you about that I was never taught. We never taught economic conduct, how to save, how to be independent economically. Nobody ever talked about our future. Israelis, but particularly students, live day to day, surviving day to day, work in temporary jobs, and so that they can be paid by the hour. So that they get paid more by the hour if they do, so that they can manage to make ends meet, particularly when universities, the prices of living are going up around universities, particularly in the cities in which we live. And two final points. Final points. We are a generation that went to the military. Most of us were officers in the military. We do reserve duty still. I have a lot of friends, myself included, who did a year of service or a preparatory year. We are Zionists. We love Israel. We gave of ourselves a lot. We did. This is the time now to invest in us as well. Thank you, Tal. And now to you, Atalia. Thank you, Tal. Let me begin by saying it's thrilling to be here. It's really the first time that our voice is heard, that the student union is, collaborating in a very interesting way with you, and I'm very glad to be here. My name is Atalia, as I was already introduced. And actually, I didn't intend to talk about this issue, but I maybe decided that I will talk about the issue of anxiety. I am vice chair of the student union. I hear quite a bit about students and people talking a lot, and everybody is anxious. Everybody is suffering from stress. So let me just begin by saying we're anxious, about the possibility of buying an apartment someday. It looks like some far-off, remote dream. In today's reality, I'm 26 years old. It's important that I have an independent life. I'm a student. I work full-time. I would like to not live with my parents. I would like to have a job that allows me to, finance my own needs and expenses in a respectable manner. And yet it's hard to live here, hard to pay the rent, hard to pay tuition, hard to deal with the rise in prices that is something that keeps going up. And it can be that we're standing here in Reichman talking, but it could be the Ben Gurion University, Haifa University, Tel Aviv University. They'll say the same thing to you. Another form of anxiety or concern, and I'm pained to say it, when I sit with my father on a Friday night dinner and he looks at me with pained eyes and he said, Atalia, this is not the country I fought for. And I can feel his disappointment. It's a weight. It's scary. How to deal with it, what's going to happen in this country in the future. It's hard to know that this is now on my generation's shoulders. We are anxious because every time we turn on the TV, we discover another problem that has arisen, and I'm going to give the credit this week to Yulia, the seal, that gave us maybe a good mood in one of the news clips, but something that you can feel every night, every time you hear about another problem that is another source of anxiety. And Tal talked about this. We're also concerned with global warming and the climate catastrophe and what will happen here in 50 years. Will we be able to even live here? And live, I mean living at 50 degrees Celsius, that's not life, particularly when electricity prices are going up, and that impacts everybody. And another form of concern is that we understand that the ball is in our court, that we bear the responsibility, not only for the entire planet. We'll, in a couple of years, have to take care of our parents as they age, and maybe, God willing, have a couple of kids of our own. And the idea of what's going to happen here in Israel and what will be the concerns of my children one day are just as worrying. Another form of anxiety, another reason that I'd like to raise, is the concern of the hatred we see in public, and we see this all the time lately. If somebody who could have been my brother, my cousin, even if you thought differently from me, that was once. Now we are the greatest enemies, and just because they don't agree with me about something. And finally, the final reason, which is just as important and maybe the most important, is our security concerns. And that's something that we have been hearing from the establishment of the State of Israel to this very day. Nuclear Iran that keeps on going, and security threats, and that's stressful as well. So when I was trying to think of what is the root of this problem, how can we move to a solution, I understood, and I'm saying this sadly with a heavy heart, that our problem is leadership. Our problem is the leadership, and we see this every day, and I asked many students, and we surveyed many students and questioned them. Sadly, we don't have leadership that we can look up to. We are students of government, Tal and I, and many people, just like us and in other tracks, would like to be in public service, in the public sector, and we want to be responsible and in positions of leadership. But there's no minister, there's no prime minister from the entire political spectrum that I can look at and say, that we can look at and say, this is something I'd like to use as a model, as an example. It doesn't exist today. There are none of these people that we can look up to, right, left, it doesn't matter. And I think many students identify with this feeling. We need real leadership, not populist, not sectorial, not someone who makes promises, false promises, and breaks them, not someone interest-driven. We need a leader that looks to everybody as citizens and provides solutions for everyone equally, and nobody feels that they're above anybody else or below. We need to be heard, and we as the young generation who are going to be the leaders of this country have to learn how to do it now and look to the future and say, that is our path, that's what we're going for, that's important. Thank you, Atalia. With your permission, thank you first of all to this presentation by the two of you. And now we're moving on to the focus that has always been, and that is the focus here, the price of living. The price of living in Israel is among the highest in the world. It keeps on going up and up and up. The more we fight it, the more it goes up. And the first question, of course, I'd like to turn to the two Knesset members. First of all, if you could answer Knesset member Bitan, and you are going to talk about the fight over the price of living, and you've been very involved in that as well. And I think the student body would like to hear, and everybody would like to hear, what and how can the State of Israel address the price of living and build a real long-term plan to fight the rise in the price of living, to reduce the prices, to create plans for the next generations that will give them a better life, that will allow them to make their lives in an easier fashion. Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation. First of all, we have to understand several things. First of all, it's not only up to the government, it's also up to the public and up to the business sector. And so putting all the responsibility on the government is not what's going to save the price of living. Sadly, very much throughout the years, in the budget, every government, the previous government, this one, everybody bring reforms that are not really reformative, because they may have impact in several years, but it doesn't really impact the price of living today. So we have to why does it happen? Because it's PR and reforms that are, for example, if you recall, Kachlon did the cornflakes reform, and they promised that the prices would go down. They didn't go down. They only went up. And now I asked for the speaker in the Knesset how this reform after several years really impacted the market according to its stated objectives. Because what happens, Knesset members are replaced, governments and administrations are replaced. Nobody looks back into history. We constantly try to, like, for example, the arrangements law, there was an attempt at that, but in the bottom line, they don't really check impact at the end of the day, and it doesn't actually impact today at all. Today, the situation in Israel is that companies have lost all shame, really. You can see this in the last price hike. They don't care about, they're not taking anything into consideration. The government doesn't scare them a bit. The government is not doing the right things to stop it. I, for example, turned to the finance ministry where there was supervision of prices on milk and milk products. And I said to the ministry, if you don't stop the supervision, all the prices will go up. Even with the unsupervised, even everything that is supervised, everything will go up. All prices of dairy will go up because the government is the one that regulates this. And the moment that the government allows supervised prices to go up, companies feel that they have free rein to do whatever they want, and that's exactly what they did. We asked 100 million, that's all, in order to stop or postpone the hike for 4 months to address the problem, and we know what the problem is, by the way. And the government didn't approve it, and everything went up and up and up, and now you can't go back. The moment the prices go up, that's it. Now, the major factor in the price of agriculture, the prices that the farmer gives to the market are mix, meaning the food that animals eat, and that is 60 to 70% of the price. Meat, chicken, eggs, for example, everything, milk, everything that has livestock, it depends on what you feed the livestock. And the livestock mix the prices go up. And we discovered in the Knesset Committee of the Economic Affairs Committee that when they pay penalties, the farmers, they have problems in the ports because the ports can't release these on time, and that they have raised penalties, and that impacts the farmers, and that impacts the consumers. Now, in the beginning, the efficiency, the price of the food mix for animals, because of the war in Ukraine, because of the problems of transportation and supply chain disruptions, when those were settled, and then the prices went down for the farmers, but that didn't impact the market at all. And so I said to the finance ministry, you have to do something irregular. Stop with this doctrine and that doctrine, and that we are not allowed to help or subsidize, and we're not allowed to intervene, and we're not supposed to be here for the support of the industrialists or whatever. That free market, free market. We understand that, but at the moment we need solutions, was my point. So you wanted more regulation, more intervention? I'm saying, for example, for the animal, for food for the animal, that maybe needs to be supervised for a year or two. Reducing the cost for farmers will reduce the price in which farmers sell to market, and reduce the price for consumers at the end of the day. And the second point is that when the government, and by the way, I can discuss politics until, we all turn blue, but I'm not talking politics. I want to talk about specifically an issue. When the government, any government, by the way, any administration, starts saying, we are going to compensate the middle class like entitlement points, and the previous government did this, and we've continued this in the last law, but we added it to the age of 18, not just the age of 12. Well, I understand from this, there's no real fight against the price of living, because when you provide compensation, you get compensation for the price of living, but the price of living remains the same. So the compensation that was given through entitlement points are just for 2 years. It's an emergency measure, but the prices of everything in stores continues to go up. You haven't done anything by doing that. So you have to fight the root, the source, which is the price of living. Now, you can't address everything at once. You have to study it, you have to prioritize, you have to look at each industry and deal with things one by one. And I'll give you an example. The VAT on foods in the OECD is between 0 to 0.8%. We're 10%. We have an additional tax. We're a Jewish state. Almost 5% addition on every price because of kosher laws. People want to buy kosher food. Okay. And so we have elements that have to do just to us, relevant to other countries. We only have these prices in Israel. So I told the finance minister yesterday, up until now, I haven't done anything extraordinary, because I think that Knesset members can do so, but if you don't want to address it, we will. We, after the budget, are going to propose a bill. I'm not saying that we're going to take it all the way, but maybe shake things up a bit in the finance ministry to understand that they have to address this, of reducing VAT on food goods and up to 8%, just like in the OECD. Everybody says Israel is part of the OECD, so let's be part of the OECD, and this will reduce food prices. For example, milk in the OECD, no VAT, no VAT, nothing. In Israel, we have taxes on everything. So we have to shake things up. And we also have to address the companies. The companies are doing at the moment whatever they want. And the public also has a role to play. In the United States, when you hike prices by 1 cent, people stop buying. Here in Israel, everybody buys everything. So the public also has to change its behavior, just as there was with the cottage cheese, where they didn't raise the prices for many years. They didn't raise. So you can formulate a plan, and we in fact do have a plan. If you want, I'll get into it. I'll have to get back to you, of course. Okay. But it has to be combined. Knesset, government, public, and the business sector. Otherwise, it won't work. So thank you very much, and we'll go back to you, and we'll discuss that issue in a moment. And I'll address you whatever you want in more extension and apart from the food, because this generation are care about not only food but transportation and living and so forth. So Knesset Hertzanu, price of living and other issues, but I'm going to give you time to address all of those things. And in addition, between that and something that we discussed prior to the beginning of this session, that the thinking today of governments throughout the years, and maybe the short time schedule, the time interval left in which planning is conducted, and we don't do anything long-term, we don't have strategic thinking, we're not looking many years down the line in a way that allows us to really conduct ourselves strategically.
Thank you very much for inviting me. This is a very respectable forum. I'm not a Dor Z, I'm still generation not Z, but Y. But I certainly do share what you think, what you've been feeling, Atalia. I am very anxious about the future of our country. When I look at the budget, which we're going to start approving this evening, I don't see even a single step almost for fighting the cost of living. I agree with your criticism, and that is crazy because the government is actually breaking the agreement between us. And Tal said, look, I've done everything. I finished high school with a good average. I went to the army. I pay taxes. I do reserve duty. I do everything that I'm asked to do. And yet, I, as a student, about to be working or working already, I cannot make ends meet. And my expectation of the government is that it'll work at it. I don't want to go into politics, but this government has replaced us in office, promising to make a difference. I remember Prime Minister Netanyahu going to supermarkets, holding all kinds of products and saying, I'm going to fight this. We're looking at the budget, we're looking at the arrangement law, we're looking at this budget. It is completely irresponsible. 14 million shekels going into coalition funds. And I agree. It's fake. It's fake. 50. If you want me to talk about it, let's talk about it. I will explain. I will explain the difference. First of all, it's not 53 million, but 30 million across a 5-year plan, across 5 years, not coalition funds, a professional plan put together by 21 government ministries for social development of the Arab society. It goes on and it continues. Prime Minister Netanyahu's plan, which was budgeted 15 million, and it's supposed to develop Arab society because they deserve to have classes and infrastructures and to develop and to integrate into Israeli society. 14 million shekel of coalition funds. And I agree with you. I think that VAT should drop by 2%. It costs 3 billion. So you have 6 billion more in coalition funds. But instead of lowering the cost of living, there is not a single reform in this budget, not a single step toward lowering the cost of living. The government is not working at this, and it needs to be worked at. I know we can do it because we did it. And it's very hard, but it requires hard work. You didn't do anything. Come on, let's ignore that. He didn't do anything either. The import reform led by Prime Minister Yair Lapid and Orna Barbievai, Minister of Economy, who lowered taxes. They brought Carrefour here. They opened the market. The agriculture reform. These are steps that were taken. Ministers worked at it. I feel like the government is not working at it. And I agree with your criticism, but I'm also saying 14 billion shekels in coalition funds. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. I don't know if you know, but 285 million shekel of the coalition funds serve to set up the authority for strengthening Jewish identity. Avi Maoz's authority, the main role of which is to build a family and to make babies, to persecute the LGBTQ community, because we feel we have no place here. And instead of investing in growth engines, instead of investing, it's not just the cost of living. I am anxious, I am worried, because I see the message being conveyed by the government to the younger generation. This government is saying to the young people, for the first time, openly, don't integrate into the labor market. This is a whole generation in the ultra-Orthodox community that is going to be uneducated, and if they are doubling the amounts they're giving them, the benefits they're getting, it's going to be terrible. What are they going to give students? How much more are students getting? Nothing. A zero. Not a single penny in this budget is going to make the lives of students simpler. Why don't Tal and Atalia get 2,500 shekels once every so often and have double their budget to come and study here? And it's not just that. It's not just that the government is telling its young people don't integrate into the labor market, but it's also ensuring that they'll have no tools to do so, because once the government finances, in the budget that we're going to approve tonight, once it goes and finances studies that do not have core studies, STEM studies, where young people will not learn English or math or computer studies or sciences. They have no tools to integrate into the labor market. And that's why this government is basically telling our people, the young people, Generation Y and Z, the future generations and it really is a huge, terrible embarrassment. It's a disgrace. We witness the irresponsibility of this government. They are shedding the responsibility for the future, for the younger people. And I want to talk a little bit about the climate crisis as well, because unfortunately, Israel and this government does not look at the climate crisis as the challenge it is, and it is certainly one of the greatest, if not the greatest challenge that we are facing. The arrangement law that you have brought to the table is an attack, an extreme attack on environmental protection and on the climate crisis. You have punched holes into the clean air law. You made sure that infrastructure will be built on our small strip of coast without having to go through the Environmental Protection and Coastal Committee. You have ensured that the mechanism of approving power stations, powerhouses in the midst of communities will go through without any approval, and you deny this. And I know that you don't share these views, but this is the law that is coming to the table. And as the chairman of the climate committee in the Knesset, working day and night to make sure that we keep protecting the environment, I am very worried about the direction that this government is taking when it comes to the climate crisis. And I'll say one more thing. I have stomach pains. I have stomach pains when it comes to the climate crisis. And therefore, the first meeting I held with a minister in this government was with the Minister Silman. And I said, our government had a climate law that was going to pass. And I have some criticism over it. I think it should be more ambitious, there should be more oversight. But I'm telling you, Minister Silman, please bring any other kind of climate law. We have stomach pains, but we will support it from the opposition, both coalition and opposition. There's no coalition and opposition when it comes to the climate. We'll talk about sustainability in a moment. I just want to focus on the cost of living for now. Of course, we'll get there as I've promised. I want your comment, but let me just ask a question, and then you can, of course, answer my question and also what's been said, because this discussion is very important. I'm assuming that there's politics involved as well, but we should try to be practical in this discussion in terms of what this generation is worried about. But of course, one of the issues that has come up here, also when it comes to what the students have said, and it will come up later as well, and we're also seeing this in the day-to-day, is of course beyond the cost of living that is rising. Also, employment security that's come up in terms of working for the government, but also employment in general in the younger generation. Does the market allow for such security? Does it allow in terms of wages, in terms of conditions, in terms of the ability to also study, not just work, and also in terms of workplaces? Are there enough workplaces? Are there enough jobs available? That's an issue that has come up as very concerning. And the matter of housing in Israel, which of course makes it difficult for everyone, but certainly makes it difficult for the younger generation that is looking around and asking themselves, how will we ever get there? So in an overall sort of outlook, let's talk about that as well. Okay, first of all, I was also a member of Knesset, in the previous government. So perhaps I was not in the Knesset and I didn't see your laws or anything you've done, because you didn't do anything. But the bottom line is, and I don't want now to disagree with you or to argue with you, but there is hardly any unemployment in Israel. There is work. There's plenty of work. The question is what kind of work and how much you make working at it. So it's true, students in Israel are struggling. My daughters too were students until recently, and I was also a student. Of course, it was the 1980s back then, but still, it's not easy to be a student in Israel, and it's true because you start your life, and in every other country in the world, students struggle at first, but then when they study and when they sophisticate themselves and they get a good job, they improve their position. It's part of what happens around the world, not just in Israel. So to expect us to solve all the students' problems immediately as soon as they start studying, that's impossible. I don't think it's anything you can expect of us to do as a ruling government, as a ruling party, or any government, to solve all the problems at once. Okay, but shouldn't there be a long-term plan that perhaps will not all be implemented in your term in office? Well, I understood that all she's saying is that right now students are struggling to make ends meet, not about what we're promising in the future, because that already depends on them, how they integrate into the labor market and what kind of jobs will be available to them and what the development is. In Israel, lots of students do go to high-tech, they make good money there, they earn well there. I don't think that's the problem. The problem is, today, so let's start by saying that unlike what everyone has said, I think that the government is investing in higher education. It's investing in many funds and a lot of money into the students. And I'll give you an example. It doesn't invest in colleges, but it does invest in universities in terms of tuition fees. 12,000 shekels, that's the tuition fee, and the college is 33,000. My daughters went to colleges, they didn't go to universities. So helping students, it's available, this kind of help. We're not going to confront one another on how much the government is investing in each student coming to study in the university more than a college. But there is an investment. The question is, what can you do along the way? There used to be a lot of fellowships and a lot of scholarships in the past, and now there aren't very many of them. It's kind of been taken out. And when I was a student, almost all of my tuition fee was covered by scholarships, and then I didn't have to, and I had to work. But only when I was not studying, only when there were breaks during the academic year. Now you can't do that, and also the cost of living has gone up. We rarely went out but you go out every day almost, and there are all kinds of situations where you can't always just tell the government it's their responsibility. So who is supposed to take care of these things on the state level? I don't think we can open up all the problems of every single person on an individual level. In terms of the students themselves, of course we can't solve all of their problems. We have to invest, and they have to invest, and I think they should also get a grant of some sort, just like the yeshiva students get. There's no argument. I mean, who says it's not going to happen? We gave soldiers added bonuses in terms of their ability to go to university after their military service. That's also huge budgets. But I'm telling you that a budget is, you have to have a budget, but it's not the only thing. You can still make changes in the budget after it's been approved. And perhaps we also need to look into grants for students, and we can fight this together. But to come and say and come and demand that everything will happen at the same time, that's impossible. There are priorities, you know. And in terms of the unique funds, what's a unique fund? What's an earmarked fund? A unique fund means that it's not part of the basis of the budget. If a budget was approved by the government and was put before the Knesset, every addition to it is a unique fund. So if the Knesset or government has decided to add a budget or to make a change in it, and for all sorts of reasons, it is considered a unique fund. That's why the funds to Ra'am were also unique funds. Some of them were base budget funds, but most of them were unique funds. And therefore, the word unique funds in parentheses, in quotation marks, sounds bad, but by the way, we didn't cheat anyone. In the elections, even before the elections, we said that we were going to make the ultra-Orthodox education on par, on the same level as the regular education. People went to vote when this was on the table. We didn't say come after the elections and suddenly do something we didn't say we were going to do. Should it have been conditioned by STEM studies, maybe, so that there will be a better future for these people in the state? Well, there are ultra-Orthodox who integrate into the labor market, and I'll give you another example. It's a personal thing. My assistant, I have an assistant. He's ultra-Orthodox, and he didn't study STEM studies, and he knows computers more than I do. He knows math better than I do. He works. He has no problem. So it's also a matter of a personal thing. It's not just because he didn't study STEM at school or in secondary school or in elementary school. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be part of the labor market. So it's not as if you're going to say everyone's going to be this way or everyone's going to be another way. It's a matter of individual personality, and now the trend should be to have the ultra-Orthodox integrate to the labor market, because that's going to add to our, increase our productivity, and that is something that is of national interest. The ultra-Orthodox understand that too. They also want to do that. They also want their standard of living to be higher. There's absolutely no argument when it comes to that. And what do you think? You think that if they now study in yeshiva, they will not integrate in the labor market? Ultimately, of course they will, because there's no other choice. These days, you cannot make do with 2,000 or 3,000 shekel you get as a benefit. It's not something that you can do. You can't live this way. And they also have an interest, and their leaders too. They're members of Knesset in this entire system where they say that because they want everyone to remain poor, so that they'll keep voting for them. That is just nonsense. Obviously, it's not true, because everyone wants to get better in life, to progress in life, and the whole world is progressing, because that's the global trend, not just here in Israel. Now, I'll give you an example. If it could just be, please be brief. No problem. Let's pass the microphone on. In this budget, of course, there will be a lot of claims or a lot of objections. Everyone wants money, everyone wants budgets, everyone wants all sorts of things, but every organization wants it for themselves. At the end of the day, a budget is a priority. It's a set of priorities, and that's what they decided, but we can always change. And I want to remind you that in the Finance Committee, all kinds of budget changes are constantly coming up by the billions. You know it. When people decide to do something, you can change as long as there is income, and there'll only be income if there'll be growth. So why am I so in favor of the reform? Why did I tell them to stop? Because obviously that will harm the economic aspect, especially the high-tech industry, which provides 38% of Israel's income. If this industry will be harmed, we will not be able to help students. We will not be able to help the ultra-Orthodox. We will not be able to help anyone, because the income will go down, growth will go down, income will go down. And therefore, we need to take into account. You feel like they're listening to you? Yes, the Prime Minister he stopped it. You think he stopped it for no reason, the reform? Because he realized, he saw the implications, the economic, state, political, security, social implications, and that's why he suspended this reform. I don't know where it's going right now. I think it's not going to progress to where they wanted it to be. And we have to realize where we're living and what the reality is. And when you find out that there could be an economic sort of impact, negative impact, if we can, and maybe in a year's time, if the high-tech industry will be harmed, we won't be here, we won't be able to talk about anything because they form 38% of the income. That's why we have to take care of this, and we need to do this together. And you, too, need to understand, you have fallen in love, you're enamored with the protest because you want to topple the government. But if at the end of the day you want to reach a compromise, you have to fight for this compromise. And it's up to all of you, not just up to me or the Likud, it's also up to you, the opposition. Thank you very much, MK Bitan. I just want to say something very briefly. First of all, I want us to focus once again on this generation because I think that we've kind of we've digressed from it. But also the previous generation, our parents, when they studied, and perhaps even before then, 2 generations beforehand, it wasn't even something that everyone did. It wasn't obvious that people went to study. It was always expensive, and it'll be expensive for students in the future, and that's not the point. The point is, let's look at this very high-quality generation, and let's leave them here, because people who go to high-tech, and I have friends who go to high-tech, more humane in my way I take sustainability in government, but I have friends who are in the intelligence, in the IDF, and they went to high-tech, and you know what? It's not that obvious that they will stay here in Israel. You have to remember these things. I'm saying that very, and it's very sad. But those who go to high-tech have great opportunities out there. They can earn a lot. So let's make sure they stay here. It's our interest, I think. If we're here in the future, we want these good, successful people, strong people, good people, smart people to stay here. Let's give them a good salary. Let's leave them here. Let's build future plans. That's what I meant. Thank you very much. Atalia, do you want to add something? Atalia? MK Hertzanu, we're not wrapping up yet, but do you want to say anything in terms of the cost of living and the students? David, I find it difficult to have a dialogue with you because I feel a dissonance. I agree with your criticism, and I wish your line were the one leading the government, but it isn't. Because you're saying, okay, it's no problem to bring grants to students just like the yeshiva students are getting, but show me the section in the budget that says so, that says both will get the same. And they're saying it's no problem to do lots of things, and that should be done, but I would recommend, David, I'm sorry, I cannot interpret David because he's not speaking into a microphone. You're saying it should be done as if you're not part of the coalition, as if you're not part of the government, the ruling party. What do you mean it should happen? So do it. When I look at the current budget, and by the way, you're right. You're right. This defines this list of priorities. And when I look at the national set of priorities, we're not there. The general population is not there. You see sectors. I look at this budget, I look at this document. The Minister of Finance has drafted a budget that is only for his sectors. The ultra-Orthodox are in there, the religious Zionists are there, or the religious Zionist party is in there. Where's the periphery? Where's the geographic and social periphery? Where are the students? Where are the growth engines? What you keep saying, the message being conveyed, and I'm telling you really from the bottom of my heart, and because I really am anxious about the future of this country, because I feel that this government is actually tearing 2 documents. One, the agreement, the contract it has with us, and the Declaration of Independence. It tears into pieces the character of Israel as a Jewish democratic country. And you're saying that yourself. This government coup is a problem with it causes is detrimental to the high tech. I'm just saying it's causing risk, not that it's detrimental. Well, David, this budget, what it creates for the younger generation is telling some of the younger people, most of whom are sitting in this circle, you will serve, you will pay, you will do your duties, and at the same time, other people, other young people, because they have greater pull in the government, because they are from the ultra-Orthodox society, they will not serve in the IDF, they will not work, they will not pay, and who will fund them? Who will finance them? Who will pay for these people who do not have the basic tools to integrate into the labor market? Which profession can you now integrate into in Israel 2023 without learning math, without learning English, without learning science? What are you going to do? What? I'm asking you, honestly. I don't want to open this up to discussion, but I just want to say one more thing. That's exactly the PR. What do you mean, where are they all? The budget is divided into all the sectors. Education has gone up to over 80 million shekel. Schools are there. Municipalities get money. You're talking about the later, more recent changes that are in the form of unique funds. But the budget itself is distributed to the entire state, all the citizens as always. It's not as if everything has now been stopped. MK Hertzanu and MK Bitan, you will get more time to speak. As if we're not giving it to anyone. You will get a chance to speak. You will get a chance to speak. Let me just please allow, because this panel, MK Bitan, it's just not true. Why is it not true? With your permission, please, just 1 minute, you will get the opportunity to speak. Just wait 1 minute. We have a schedule to adhere to. You will have time. We will wrap up. Of course, you will both have time to speak. Yitzhak, you wanted to raise a question. Please ask it now. Here's something better. I was asked to give you this. Now speak to that. Like this? Wow. Yes, it's a high-tech. Thank you. First of all, hi everyone. My name is Yitzhak Rodaj. I'm a law and government student, originally from Rishon LeZion. I thought for a long time how to ask this question, and I'm going to ask MK Bitan this question. Can you hear me? Is this better? The question is, and I want to go down into more practical terms, how and what should we do in terms of the set of priorities and the state budget, especially when it comes to the changes both for the sectorial distribution of funds, and how can we prioritize support for the younger generation, the students who form the future of this country. I know it was said here, but I want you to go down to practical terms. That's my question. I'll tell you the truth. I don't have an answer for you, honestly. The younger generation, the students, certainly, first of all, they do get a response, they do get budgets within the state budget. Just as I've said, it's not as if we're only talking about the money now. It's only the 2,000 shekel going to the yeshiva students, so now nobody else is getting anything. The budget revolves around the 500 billion shekel, and all the sectors get, including students, including universities, including everyone. So you can't now ignore it and can't talk about the 3-4 million shekel. That's the unique addition. And I said, and I'm not just saying that, in order to publicly make this, put an end to it, I think the students should also get 2,000 shekel. Just like they should get. If the yeshiva students are getting, so the regular students should get as well. But it doesn't mean that this budget can't be changed. The budgets get changed in the Knesset regularly by government resolutions, and it's possible. Now, we need to help the students in general to find work, to get scholarships. Right now, there are barely any scholarships. The government should allocate funds to scholarships. Scholarships usually help students who do not have the means themselves or their parents. So we can put together a plan that helps. And by the way, they've already started. I think they started with 80%. We completed it to 100%, helping soldiers who complete their service and want to study. So we give them 100% of their tuition fees out of the money that they deserve, that they get. So we help, and we should help more, without a doubt. Now there's a program that helps students. It still hasn't been finalized, and that is riding for free transportation in public transportation. Rav Michaeli started, but she didn't do enough, so we're improving it. In the state budget, there already are 360 million shekel allocated to this, and we need to add another 360 million, which will allow all women from the age of 62 and all men from the age of 67 to ride on the public transportation for free, and the same for students. And the periphery, doesn't matter if you're young or a student or old, 50%. And until the age of 26, also 50%. So all the students will be in, even though some students also go at the age of 40 or 60 to university, but the younger ones, yes, they're all in. So there are plans in place that will help the students. And it's never enough. It's never going to be enough. Everyone thinks that they deserve more, that they should get more because they have a problem right this minute. But the government has to look at the entire full picture. And we need to do things this way. But we can't solve all the students' problems at the same time. Thank you very much, MK Bitan. I want to say a few words, and then we will hear concluding remarks from both of you. In the recent months, and I said that in my opening remarks, but it's important to say because it's one of the things that is really the most important in my opinion. We did some work here at the IPS, and I want to give you this work. An in-depth analysis of the Future Generation Commission. It's an institute that was set up by MK Tommy Lapid at the time in 2001 and closed down in 2010, unfortunately, by MK Yariv Levin. The Next Generation Commission is an institution that many Western countries have, and the aim of it is to ensure that all the decision-making processes in the government take into account the needs of the future generations, whether it's climate or environmental protection or sustainability or transportation infrastructure, cost of living, development, employment, everything. This institution does not exist at present in Israel. And our analysis deeply analyzes this, and I would like you to take this document. This could be something that can maybe be promoted for the future generations. Take this issue and understand that in order for the government in the long term to have this promoted, we need to re-establish this position, this institution, this commission for the future generations that forces the government ministries to think strategically many years ahead and to make decisions now that take into account the future generations, because you represent the younger generation still, but most of us, our children are already at the age of these students here, and it is very important that we make sure that the future generations that come after us will be able to live here. So this is the matter of the Future Generation Commission. This is a document, an analysis that is on the IPS website. You can download it, you can read it, of course, and of course it will be given to anyone who asks for it. So if there are no other comments, let us please wrap up. MK Hertzanu, please give your concluding remarks, and then MK Bitan. First of all, I would like to thank you for raising this commission. I signed a bill for re-establishing this commission as a council. I hope this is it. This is very important to ensure the rights of those who are not here yet, and so thank you for talking about that. And also I want to give one piece of data. I don't know if you know it, David. After the current budget, the investment in a student in private SHAS education system is 4,000 shekels more than it was. And in Yadut Torah, it will be 2,000 shekels more, all in comparison to the regular student. And this is a complete change of paradigm, and you are incentivizing the younger generation the children, the current generation, not to study, not to gain the tools that will enable them to integrate into the labor market. And I once again want to ask, if they will not be able to integrate into the labor market, who will pay for them? Who will provide for them? And aside from the social disaster that this means, the government is now stealing from the younger generation. The government is stealing from the younger generation the tools that will enable it to then pursue their dreams, to be who they want to be in life. And I think that there is nothing worse that a country or government can do to its citizens. And I once again want to say I will fight this budget and I will fight this government's policy, because I believe that you are not doing your job properly. Your job is to make sure that this generation will continue to ensure that Israel will be a startup nation, will continue to aspire, to strive for innovation, to strengthen students rather than weaken them. You need to strengthen them, so let's make sure we do that. Thank you very much. MK Bitan, very briefly. I understand the criticism, that's what you do when you're in the opposition. But I want to emphasize one thing. We have come to what we have come, although the ultra-Orthodox over the last 20 years have not studied STEM studies. And I want you to understand, it doesn't mean that the country will get to this bleak prophecy that you keep talking about in the opposition. I want to say that our chances of improving the situation of everyone in all sectors is by growth. We don't want to raise taxes. We want to create and generate growth. We want to generate income that comes from growth. And to do that, we need to help those sectors that we still have not given them everything that they deserve. And therefore, it is important for us not to harm growth in Israel, just as we have done in the last 10 years. And that's why I said that high-tech, because of its impact, now it is really at the forefront of Israel. Because of its impact on Israel's income and on growth in Israel, we cannot create a reality where it is harmed. And that is why it is our job to make sure that won't happen. Thank you very much. The message is clear.